Okay, today we are making focaccia or deep dish pizza. It's essentially the same dough, it's just different toppings. So we'll just talk a little bit about the size of pan that you need to use. For this pan, which is 9 by 13, that's good for 2 cups of flour, and that's probably 2 very hungry people. Then you have a larger size. This is 11 by 14, and this is good for 3 cups of flour and probably 4 people. And then you have your party size. This one is 15 by 16, and it's good for 4 cups of flour and probably 6 people or more. Usually when I'm making pizza at home, just for Roxanne and I use the more traditional round size. This is an oven-proof pan, which works really nicely for 2 hungry people. I will be back in just a couple of minutes to do the dough. Okay, so we're ready to go. We are going to use the medium-sized pan, which is 3 cups of flour as your starter. And as I said, that's good for about 4 people. So there's the pan. And now we will mix up our dough. So 3 cups of flour. There we are. We're going to put 3 cups of flour in. Then 1 teaspoon of salt. And a half teaspoon of yeast. When you're doing this, obviously if you go larger, you can maybe just make your yeast a little bit more. Don't worry too much about it. It's not an exact science in that respect. You think it is, but it's not really. And so then we take our dry ingredients, mix them up. Make sure to mix them up before you put your water in.
How much yeast did you put in again?
That was a half teaspoon. But as I say, if you're using the 4 cups, then just add a little bit more. So you've mixed that up. Now you have your water, 1.5 cups. So again, the important thing to remember is it's always a 2-to-1 ratio. If you have 2 cups of flour, it's 1 cup of water. 3 cups of flour, 1.5 cups. 4 cups to 2. So just keep that ratio, and then bump up the salt and the yeast a little bit accordingly. So there's 1.5. Put it in. In my experience, it's always better to be a little too wet than too dry. You want to make sure that you're feeding the yeast. If there's not enough water, then the yeast can't really start to get active. If you just generally stir this up, it's really a shaggy mess, and that's okay. That's how it's supposed to look. Just keep stirring until you get most of that flour absorbed, and then we're going to come back in a minute or two to do some kneading. Okay, so now we're just going to do a little bit of kneading to make sure that the flour and water and everything's all mixed up nicely. There's a little bit of flour on your board. Just take all of that, dump it out, and you're going to knead for, I don't know, anywhere from a minute to 2 minutes. You'll start to see it coming together. It's this shagginess that you're trying to eliminate. So get it into more of a smooth ball. Just knead away, turning over, trying to incorporate as much of those little ends as you can. And you can see it's already starting to look a little bit more like a pizza ball, even though it still has some of those rough edges to it. That's okay. As it expands in the bowl, you'll see that it balloons up and you won't have those little edges anymore. So just kind of gently make it into a ball like that. Take some of your excess flour, put it in there just to make sure it doesn't stick. Drop your ball in, just for show, and then make sure to cover it. If you've got a lid, that's great. If you don't, plastic wrap. We're going to let this sit for about 5 hours. It's now about 10 o'clock. So around about 3 o'clock, we're going to take it out and put it in our pan, and it'll do its second rise. Okay, so here we are. We're at about 3 o'clock, and you can see there's really nice yeast activity here. The dough has risen. It's doubled at least. So that's our dough. Next thing we're going to do is put in oil in the pan. So I've got grapeseed oil here, but you can use light olive oil or some other vegetable oil. So I am going to put about 2 ounces, 2 tablespoons, or about 1.5 ounces of oil. And this is where it gets crazy, kids. So you just put that all in there. And it seems like a lot, and you're even going to put a little bit more. Now, take it with your hands, spread it all around, up the sides. This is what's going to keep the dough from sticking to the pan, and it's also going to give a really nice crust. So yes, if you are afraid of oil and fat, this is probably not the recipe for you. So get it all on your hands. There's our dough. Scrape it out. You're going to pick this up in your hands. That's why you want to have a little bit of oil on your hands so that it doesn't stick. And get it out. So now you've got this big glob, and you're just going to stretch it out as much as you can, like this. You're never going to get it to the exact size, because that's going to happen during the second rise. So once it's in the pan, just spread it out with your fingertips as much as you can. And if you tried to spread it out now, it would never happen. You can see it's very elastic. So we're going to let it sit for 2 to 3 hours, and this is going to just relax and spread out. And then we're going to do a last push to get it in the corners. So last thing to do is cover it with plastic wrap and then let it sit for 3 hours. So here we are. What is it? Another 3 hours later. You can see it's a little darker, so we're not cheating here. It's actually the truth. And you can see this has already started to stretch out quite nicely. There's lots of bubbles, and we're just going to coax it into the corners on its own. If it doesn't go all the way, that's okay, because it is going to puff out and puff up and puff out when we do it. So just to show you, I have these toppings here that we're going to put on. Some really nice salami. This is actually fig and port wine dried salami. None of that sort of cheap packaged stuff you get. And some olives, some onions, rainbow peppers, cheese, probably 3 or 4 cups, and sauce. The main difference here, because it's Detroit style pizza, it's in reverse. The cheese goes on the bottom and then the toppings on top. So cheese on the bottom all the way to the edge, so you get crispy crusts, and then we're going to put the toppings on. So let's put the toppings on. So we had some technical difficulties, but I'm just going to review what we did. We stretched the dough out into the corners. Then we put a serious layer of cheese here. It's at least 2 cups. There's actually more left over. So 2 cups of cheese right to the edge, because you want to have those crispy bits when it browns up. Then I put rainbow peppers, and then this really nice salami, some olives, and these onions. So again, counterintuitive. Detroit style pizza is upside down. So after the cheese and the toppings, then you put sauce. Go figure. How weird is that? But it tastes really good. Don't put too much. The good news is, with the cheese on the bottom, you don't get a really wet, soggy crust. It's nice and fluffy, let's hope. Like that. And you'd be surprised at how flavorful that all is. And then finish it off with a little bit of Parmesan. So this is going to go into the oven in a few minutes, but we're just going to pause because it's going to take a little bit of time to warm the oven up. So here we are. We're about to put it in the oven. It's all been dressed, and it's at 450. So 450, and it's going to go in for 15 minutes. So stay tuned. It's going to come out looking awesome. Okay, so here we are. We were baking 15 minutes at 450. And here comes the hot pizza, baby. Hot pizza. Look at that. Woo!
Yeah.
Whoa!
Looking good,
baby.
looking good.
It's always a party when you got pizza.
Whoa,
So,
yeah.
I'm not going to take it out because sometimes you have to kind of scoop it out a little bit, but just scoop it out and then cut it, and you're having a great time.
Yeehaw.
See ya.